Okay, so we know that the discovery of penicillin was one of the most important discoveries in more recent times. It has led to the cure of many, many diseases in many different people, and it has saved a lot of lives. So it is very important. So if you're not aware, penicillin is an antibiotic, the very first antibiotic discovered, and it was actually discovered by accident when some mold spores got into a culture of bacteria, and where the mold landed, there was no bacterial growth due to the penicillin killing off all the bacteria. So this is kind of the chemical composition of penicillin, very interesting. It also has an interesting mechanism of action. So basically how penicillin works is it inhibits the formation of bacterial cell walls. So cell walls are very important in every species of bacteria, essentially, more so in the gram-positive ones that have the very, very thick cell walls, but that's kind of not the important part. So kind of how that works, there's a thing called a beta-lactam ring, which is that square with the N in it right in the middle of the molecule. So that square is the beta-lactam, and that is the very important part of the penicillin molecule because that binds to certain molecules in the bacterial cell wall, preventing the crosslinks that stabilize the cell wall to be formed. And without the formation of these crosslinks, then the bacteria can't make their cell wall and eventually just burst. And as you may have guessed, the bursting of the bacterial cell kills the bacteria and therefore stops the infection, which is great. However, some bacteria have developed a resistance to penicillin by the synthesis of this enzyme, which is beta-lactamase. So basically, the beta-lactamase disrupts the beta-lactam ring, which we saw in the molecule above there, so it can no longer bind to the bacterial cell wall and mess with the crosslinks, essentially rendering the antibiotic useless. In the case of penicillin, this enzyme helps turn the penicillin molecule into penicillic acid, which is just harmless to the bacteria. It doesn't mess with the crosslinks, so it doesn't mess with the cell wall, so it's basically ineffective. So this enzyme doesn't just work against penicillin, it also works against basically any antibiotic that its main mechanism of action involves that beta-lactam ring. And so theoretically, these bacteria that have this beta-lactamase can become resistant to a wide range of antibiotics because they all use the beta-lactam ring. And as antibiotic resistance goes, it can be passed between different species and strains of bacteria due to horizontal gene transfer, which I've talked about in a previous video. And they basically pass on the genes coding for this beta-lactamase between the different bacterias, and when the genes are passed around, so is the antibiotic resistance, which is a problem. Regardless of the medical issues that it is causing, it is still very interesting. Both the penicillin and the beta-lactamase have very interesting mechanisms of action. And just take a second and say thank you to this mold that helped make one of the most important medical discoveries.